Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Elevation Association podcast. My name is Dr. Jared Hill. And today with me, I have Ryan Passy, who is a co-owner of Elevation Association and the managing director of the Dental Legacy Foundation, and is also our business manager at Wood River Dental Care. And Ryan, it's great to have you on today. We are missing Dan. Dan is off today on vacation. And so Ryan and I have a really cool podcast, something that we're very excited about for you guys today. It's been a awesome, beautiful fall here, Ryan, and here we are getting ready to talk about some leadership principles. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is an exciting topic for us. I love the leadership component of Elevation Association. We focus on, those our three peaks: life, leadership, and legacy. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the legacy peak and kind of our framework for helping dentists to work on their leadership abilities and and put some things into their practice to help them be successful. So super excited about this one. This is one of my favorite topics. It's where I spend a lot of my time, where as we work with dentists and stuff is helping them develop a leadership plan. And so this is one of my favorite topics, and I love it. So
Yeah, this is going to be kind of a fun topic because I don't if you guys know much about us. We like to use the climbing analogy. You know, we're an elevation association. We talk about peaks. We talk about mountains. We talk about teams. We talk about getting to the top. And so we're going to, as we talk about this today, we talk about your leadership in your practice, the 8 leadership milestones for your practice. We're going to relate it to climbing and some analogies there. And that's pretty fun. As a little plug in, next year in October of 2026, when we go to Africa, we will be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So if you're interested in coming with us, let us know. We have a good group already going, and we'll be putting some of these principles to practice while we do that. So
oh yeah, we love to get out and explore and climb the peaks. And the peaks, I think, are just such a great analogy for, you know, um, having success in these different areas in your life. Because, life's a journey and you're always trying to work from, where you're at to the top of the peak. And I think, the mountaineering theme that we use throughout Elevation Association has a lot of meaning, especially for us. I mean, I think, we like to get out and climb and do the mountains, and there's so many things you learn along the way. And there's so many things that relate back to life and progress in your journey. And so I really love the metaphor of the mountain. And I love how we've kind of weaved that into the fabric here at Elevation Association and kind of put these peaks together, and then how to climb them. I think it's been fantastic. So yeah.
yeah, as you think about like climbing a mountain and these climbers that go through this, if you've ever done any sort of trekking or backpacking experience, what you'll know, and first thing you can correlate is that every climb or every trip, backpacking trip, the most unpredictable thing about the whole thing, you can plan everything up, but the most unpredictable thing is being caught in a storm. Okay, so I saw a patient the other day who was on his way. He was on a solo trip. He and his dog were on a trip. Had volunteered to go and clean up one of the trails, and he had planned it all out. He got everything ready to go. He knew his course, but then he ran into a storm, and he ended up having to turn around and come back because he wasn't quite prepared for the storm. He assumed, because it was early September, that the weather was just going to be gorgeous like it usually is, and it's going to be a perfect weekend. But what he failed to do was prepare for the storm. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today, like preparing for the storm, because you can plan out your hike, right? You can create your vision. But if you're not ready for the storm that comes, then you're going to get knocked off course and maybe turn around and halt your progress. And that's what these 8 leadership milestones help you do. They help you set your course and then when the storm comes, you weather the storm. You get through it, and you can finish your peak. So I think we'll probably start there. The format today is going to be kind of fun. Ryan, why don't you just, I'm going to tell my experience, but it might be more fun. And maybe if you ask me some questions regarding, maybe set me up for some of these experiences, and then we can walk through some of these milestones.
That sounds great. Well, with that in mind, I'd just like to ask you, have you ever felt like, in your journey as a dentist, um, ever caught in a storm, along the way? Did you ever come across a moment that was, you found yourself kind of unprepared or had second thoughts about your journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this is true for every dentist. And, without a vision, first of all, without a vision of where you're at, your dental practice is really just drilling and filling, right? Whereas when you have a vision, then your practice it becomes more of a mission. And so when you start out and you have this same thought process that a lot of dentists have, I'm going to come out, I'm going to buy a practice, and I want ownership, and I'm going to practice for the next 30 years, and I'm going to have a great career, and I'm going to retire, and that's kind of how as far as you go. Well, Dan always quotes Mike Tyson. Everybody always has a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, I got punched in the face like day one of buying my practice, and so I was out for a year. I'd been out for 2 years, and I bought my practice, and I had a um, front office receptionist come to me and said, "Hey, she's older, she's been experienced, she'd worked in practices for about 25 or 30 years. She's like, "Hey, Dr. Hill, so and so, the hygienist would really like to go full time. Can we hire on her full time?" And it's like, "Yeah, I mean, why not, right? Like full time's always better." Uh, I had zero data. I didn't even know I didn't know the term KPI, key performance. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know I needed to look for those. I didn't even. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I even knew what a P&L was or how to even look at that point in time. I was like, yes, let's just hire someone full time. And I realized at that point in time, from that day on, I was being manipulated from the staff who had lots of experience and knew that, well, with that full time now comes benefits and all sorts of stuff that I honestly probably couldn't have afforded, because the value that she was bringing wasn't enough to justify, and we weren't busy enough to justify her go full time. But since I had committed, then I was beholden to keep this person on full time. That was just the tip of the iceberg, right? That was just the start of the manipulation that you get from team members as when you buy a practice.
Wow.
And so yeah, the storm hit fast,
And
and I was
fast.
not ready. I was not prepared. I didn't have any idea where my practice was going. I just bought a practice, and I just wanted it to grow,
Yeah.
whatever that meant. I don't know what that meant. I wanted to make more money, and I wanted to grow, because that's what you were supposed to do, as I was told at that point in time. So
Uh,
yeah, the storm hit, and it hit hard, and it hit hard for the next 10 years, honestly. And it came to the point where I was like, I am so tired of wading through this storm and not being prepared for all the things that were going to hit me the next 10 years.
uh, it's crazy. Well, that ties in well with milestone number one, right? Like milestone one is having a vision, right? Discovering the dream. Like, what is it you really want to do with your practice? And just like, any kind of successful mountaineering trip, you really have to have a good plan in place to be successful, right? You, you need to know kind of, what the end goal is in mind before you begin. And that's really the important part of like discovering the dream, like getting that down on paper, really thinking about where you want to go with your practice, your life, and having that vision really defined, right? So, um, and you talked about like when you started, you really didn't have that clear dream, right? Or that vision of what you wanted to do with your practice, which then can lead you to be manipulated a little bit. Where, where did you start to like put that vision in place for you and your practice and
Along with this, Ryan, that's a great question, because I think at the beginning of a dentist career that they don't know for sure where they want to end up. And I think now, even more than ever, there are so many different avenues you can take, right?
yeah,
if you think about Kilimanjaro, we're planning our Kilimanjaro hike next year. There are several different routes up to the top of the mountain, right? There's 5, 6, I don't know however many routes you can do. 5 days you can do as long as 8 days. There's lots of different ways to do it, and there's not a wrong way, right? But there's several different ways. But if you don't realize that I want to get to the peak, then you're just kind of going around the mountain and hiking trails and doing whatever. And so I think for me, it was when I understood this first milestone, this discover the dream, this big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG. I mean, when I first heard that term, I was like, "Oh, okay. There's like something I need to." I'll be honest, right? And I think that this is true for most dentists out there. Is it didn't come immediately to my mind. I didn't say, "Okay, okay, I need to create a BHAG. I'm going to sit down and here's my BHAG." Bah. I don't know. I didn't know what it was. I was like, what is my BHAG? What does that mean to have a big, hairy, audacious goal? I mean, does that mean because at first it's a little deceiving. When it says big, hairy, audacious goal, it means, oh, okay, I need to be a multiple practice owner, or I need to I need to sell out and be part of a DSO or whatever. I need to make $10 million this by year 5, whatever that, because it says big, hairy, audacious goal. You think crazy, outrageous. And I had to go through that. I had to wade through all of those things. Is multi-practice ownership for me? Is more of a specialty type practice for me? Is more of a cosmetic type practice for me? Like, what is my big, hairy, audacious goal? And honestly, right, it took years to kind of sit down and figure it out. And here's the thing too about this big, hairy, audacious goal is it can change, it can evolve, it can move, you can pivot as you go along. But the important thing is if you don't sit down and wade through all of these options, then you're just gonna be twiddling your thumbs. I mean, you're just gonna be doing the same thing over and over again, and you're gonna be frustrated that you're not really making any progress. You need to sit down. I really love our good friend James Heaton down in Arizona. He was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sit down. I want to be the endo guy, and so I'm going to go. And he spent a year like getting it off straight and all this stuff. And then after doing it for a year, he's like, I don't actually really like this. This isn't for me. I'm going to pivot. And he did more research. He's like, I'm going to be the ortho guy. I'm going to be the Invisalign expert in my area. And he spent 2 years going through this. And then after those 2, 3 years, he was like, man, this isn't for me either, and I think that's okay. That's part of the process. When we talk about discovering the dream, I think a lot of dentists get overwhelmed because I don't know what it is. That's okay. It's okay to not know what it is, as long as you choose something, you work towards it, and then you can eliminate it, right? And James Heaton ended up doing cosmetic dentistry and has a beautiful cosmetic practice and CE courses now that he loves and does well. And he and Michael Allen have partnered and have really found who they are and what they love. And so when we help people discover the dream, when we say, okay, when milestone, this isn't like we need to finish this step before we move on. It's like, okay, let's work through this process. All right, let's stop wandering and just kind of waffling. Let's decide something. Let's move towards it and decide if this is the direction we want to continue to climb in. What are your thoughts about that, Ryan?
I think that's right on. And James is kind of interesting, right? Talk about a guy that hit a storm halfway along the way when his office blew up, right? Like unexpected stuff happens on the trails. But no, I think you're exactly right. Like, and as we've worked with docs, it's been fun to see everybody's got a different dream. Everybody's got a different vision of where they want to go. It's not always the same. And I think that's what's really important is to, get a clear message of what success looks like for you as an individual and then start to work towards it, right? But taking the time to you know, dentists really like sometimes you got to step back, pull your head up and see where you want to go. Cause otherwise you just show up every day, put your head down and go to work. Right. And you don't really see where you're trying to take your practice in your life. So I think it's just really important to, take the moments to step back and get a clear vision of where you're really headed or your daily actions taking you towards where you want to end up in the end, and it's been fun to work with the docs over the years and see like what their BHAGs really are. And, a lot of them, it's not, multiple practices, and that most of them is like, I want to work less and enjoy life more and spend time with the people I love, and then how do I create things to make that happen for me in my life, so it's fun. But we also have those docs that want to, I want to own multiple practices and create an empire and those kind of things. So it's just great to, like, again, map out where you want to be, what success looks like for you, and then start the process of, uh, climbing the mountain, right? So
Yeah. No, we need to move on to the other milestones, but let me say this last thing about this one is this is the reason why this is a huge reason why we created Elevation Association is to get other dentists together to talk about their BHAGs. I didn't know what the possibilities were. I didn't know, until you can sit down and get a bunch of dentists together in a room separated away from their office and from their competition, and then they can tell you their whole story. You don't even know what the possibilities are. But taking a week and going to Dominica or Nicaragua, whatever, with a group of Elevation Association, you have unfettered time where you're sitting down on the beach, sitting next to Steve Call, who did private practice for what 10, 15 years, and then he went into teaching. That's an
educate.
awesome avenue. It's a cool BAG that I had thought about, and for me to be able to sit down and talk to him about that, or to sit down next to Michael Allen or and James Heaton, talk to them about their journey into that is the value of getting together with other dentists in these opportunities. And so discovering the dream, it's hard to do on your own. For me, it was anyways. I really needed to find ideas and bounce ideas off of other people. So um,
Well,
we
that's
should we should probably
you
move
know,
on to Milestone too.
move on. We could spend all day on this. And so milestone two is, now that you know like your destination, where you'd like to go. Milestone two is like establishing a baseline. Where am I currently sitting right now? So that, like, here's my starting point, right? So some of the things we do in that, as we work with practices, is try to get a clear vision of using data, P&L. Where are you at with your profit and loss? Where are you at with your metrics within your practice? So that you can kind of start to make improvements along the way. I know you mentioned earlier, like when you were being manipulated by the front, like not knowing what a KPI was or not knowing what your P&Ls were. Like, at what point did you kind of grasp the importance of kind of using data to make decisions as you move forward?
Yeah, I would say right around 2015 or 2016 um, when I discovered Dental Intel, right? I was one of the first customers of Dental Intel because I could see that I was looking for ways. I was keeping my own Excel sheets and spreadsheets, really trying to manage and track some of the data, but I didn't know which data to track and how often, and I didn't know how to use that. And so when Dental Intel came along, I thought this is the answer. This is fantastic, and so I was one of the first customers of Dental Intel, I realized that I didn't really know how to use it very well, and I was overwhelmed a lot by the numbers. But I realized the value of establishing a baseline. And here's what I found out too is there aren't a lot of people out there who understand um, how to establish a baseline in a dental practice, because dental practices are run so differently, and we categorize things so very differently, and we use some different terminology when it comes to business administration. When it comes to dentistry, mesial is mesial, distal is distal. Like we understand that. But when it comes to some business admin and it comes to running the practice, we use some different terminology. And so there aren't a lot of people who I found that were really very interested in diving deep into my practice and helping me understand what it meant. So even with a couple coaches and so forth, they didn't really know how to unravel a lot of the data that was in my practice. And I think that's why we brought Ryan on to Wood River Dental, because Dan and I, we knew the importance of it. We still hadn't really gotten our baseline, to be honest, as far as uh, a good understanding of our KPIs and P&L and collections, right? Yes, there was the surface number. Everyone can look that up, what your production is, what your collection is, but it is so much deeper than that.
Well, I
You
think it's
have to
so
start.
hard. Like, like dentists are so unique. You guys are so unique in your profession. Just because you guys are the producers within the practice, and so it's hard at the end of the day to like after you're seeing patients all day to then have the bandwidth to sit down and look at the numbers, right? Like, and really get a clear vision of like the number side of things because you're a clinician, you're working with patients all day, work with the employees, and then who's got time at the end of the day to then sit back and look at the metrics and try to make sense of all that the information. And I think that's part of why, DSOs are so tempting or they're kind of that option built in with a lot of the docs, like, let us do this portion of the practice for you. And so it's an easy handoff because it's something that dentists a lot of times don't have the bandwidth to handle, right? So
Yeah, and it gets to the point where you get excited to do it. I'm gonna dive deep into this my baseline, my KPIs, P&Ls, and then you look at it, and you're like, this doesn't make sense, right? And you realize that maybe, and then all of a sudden you think, maybe I can't trust this data. Well, who's going to go in and clean up the data that was entered into your EagleSoft or your Dentrix or whatever it is in order to be able for that system with Dental Into whatever to put out the correct data to then use that data to understand. There's so many layers to it that you really you can't do it. I'm just going to tell you, all dentists listening now, to do it by yourself, you think you're doing it. I'm promising you, you're not diving in as deep as you need to, and you cannot discover all of the issues that are going on with your data unless you have somebody come in and dig through it and walk through it with you and review it. Because there are times that Ryan did where we go through the data and a year later we're like, why is this not making sense? Like what is going on here? And that's after you review the data on a weekly basis or monthly basis, and then you see something off, and then you go back in and say, oh man, this has been entered in wrong at this side or this end, or we're interpreting it wrong. It like for a dentist to go back and do that by himself, I don't care if you have an MBA. And I just want everyone to be real, right? Be real with yourselves and be realistic with what goes on in your practice. It is really difficult to impossible to be doing this by yourself. So, but
right,
establishing your baseline is so important to be able then to have realistic expectations of what you can achieve within your practice.
right. And I think as you have that data, it's like that GPS along your journey, right? It's telling you where to make course corrections and where to move forward and stuff. So it's so important to have good, clean data and then use the data to make good decisions. And again, I think that it's like that GPS along that journey as you're trying to make your way to the top, helping you make good decisions and course corrections as you go through. So absolutely.
So after I've discovered my BHAG, right? So I've got my idea of where I want to go. And then I've got a baseline, right? This is where I'm at. I'm preparing for the storms. This is all of where I currently sit. I've dropped my shorts. This is everything, right? This is realistically who I am and where I am. What's my next step then, Ryan?
So your next step is like, how do you move forward? What are your core values? What are your non-negotiables along the way, right? Like now that we know where we want to go, where we're starting, like what are the rules that I play by as I move forward? What's the culture of my practice? What's the culture of my business? What's your true north, right? And so these are the core values of the practice. And so we try to help docs clarify and identify what their core values are in their practice as they move forward to kind of again build that culture within their team and that as they move forward. So um talk talk about that for you. Like how was that like setting core values for the practice and for you? Like what difference did that make in the practice?
Yeah, these are the rules of the game, right? This is so I'm going to play this game. I'm going to go here. I'm going to start here. But the rules are you have to have boundaries. You have to have rules of how you play the game. And for me, those rules are setting these core values so I know how to hire people. I hire, I fire, I review, and I reward, all of those things based upon the rules of the game, which are these core values. So for me, Dan and I sat down and with our leadership team, and we set our core values. Said, what is it that we are kind of non-negotiables in our practice? These are the rules by which we play by. And they shouldn't be you shouldn't be very many. We have 7, which is the max, which is too many. We
Too
probably should
many. Yeah.
we probably should narrow it down, and that's okay. But start off with 3 to 5 is probably a good way to start. But that way, whenever you face a storm, meaning whenever an employee comes up and says, "Oh, so and so isn't doing this," or "So and so isn't doing that," these, if you practice long enough, and I've practiced for 20 years, you practice long enough, you realize that there's these witch hunts that go on periodically in your office, and you're like, what is going on here? But now, instead of wasting a lot of time and energy on that, you say, what's our core value that's being violated? Oh, well, there's not really. Then it's not a core value. They're not violating it. We're moving on. Like this is how it is. So, and then every time I sit down with a review, hey, it's been a year. Let's sit down. Let's talk about how are you doing with each of these core values? How are you doing by playing the rules of the game for Woodriver Dental Care? I'm good at this. I'm good at this. I could be better at this. Excellent. Now I have something tangible with which I can grade you and value on, rather than I think you're doing a good job. Yeah, so do I. I deserve a raise. Maybe I don't know. I don't have any sort of. I don't know. That was one of my frustrations as a dentist. How and often do I give an employee a raise? When do they deserve one? Now it's like, how are you doing on your core values? I've got a very specific system and review system based upon that, and so that is how our practice. Then once we got our vision, once we got our baseline, that's how we just started to play the game, is by setting the rules, the boundaries, our core values moving forward.
That's fantastic. It's made a huge difference, I think, and again, having those, everybody understand the rules by which we play just makes it so much nicer. And everybody's working towards, um, establishing and expressing those core values on a day-to-day basis. And then it's something that becomes tangible after a while, like the culture within the practice and that. So it's great to establish those and have them written down. And, these are how we hire, fire, reward, evaluate the employees, what a difference that makes. So that's great. So our next mile point, or our next milestone, is setting waypoints. So we know where we're at, we know where we started, we know how we're moving forward. Now we're going to take some time and set like next steps within the practice, so it's not so overwhelming. We're not going to focus on going from the trailhead to the peak. We're going to take some waypoints along the way. What are some of these waypoints, Jared, as far as like timelines and stuff, as far as like what does practice need to look forward setting waypoints? What's the targets?
Yeah, this is one of my. I think this is one of the easiest visuals that you could see, because if you think about your hike, if it's an 8-day hike, you're going to have day 8, right? Day 8 is not the summit. Day 8 is when you leave, right? So you summit at day 5. So, but day 1, you've reached this point. Day 2, you've reached this point. Day 3, so you can plan out what that looks like. It's like any itinerary for a trip, even. So your waypoints for your BHAG, you can set them to whatever time length you want to. But what we do, what we feel like is good and has been proven to be good in business, is to set a 10-year target, which is kind of the kind of the big one. It's not super defined, but at least you have this idea what that looks like in 10 years. And you get more granular, put a 3-year, and then you break it down even more granular into 1 year, and then you break it down even to more granular into quarterly, right? So I think this is where a lot of the magic happens, is you get more specific and more specific and more specific, to the point to where quarterly you have everything mapped out. So you focus on 3 months, but these next 3 months, The reason why you set these waypoints within these 3 months is to accomplish your 1 year goal. Right. So your 1 year goal is to accomplish your 3 year goal. So your 3 year goal is to accomplish your 10 year. So, and you may get down this next quarter or this next year and you realize, man, we haven't really been making progress towards this 3 year goal. And we need to review this. And maybe I set my waypoints wrong. I need some course correction. Better to do that after a quarter than after 5 years or 7 years. You're like, where am I? I'm just kind of floating around. I'm just kind of doing the same thing I've always done. But it's important to take the time, and this is important too, is taking the time to set those waypoints. And that is not like after work, I'm going to sit down for a half hour and I'm going to say those waypoints. That's not what it is at all. Ryan, we just did this yesterday.
As you guys say.
Talk about the quarterly meetings and and what kind of time and effort it takes to do those things.
Yeah, so it kind of great timing. We just had our quarterly meeting yesterday with our leadership team. So we took the last blocked out the last 4 hours of the day yesterday from noon to 4 and met as a leadership team to review the previous quarter, quarter three for our practice. And then we go through all the metrics and numbers. We have specific leadership targets, and then we have goals and numbers set for each employee within the practice so that we know, like, every employee has a number that they're trying to work towards for each quarter that then helps us get towards our yearly goal. And it's a lot of fun for us, I think, as a leadership team, as we've learned over the years. Like, those meetings become pretty fun when it's like, I mean, we were right on target yesterday on almost every metric, right? Like, the goals are attainable, but they make us stretch. And it's fun to see, the practice come together and just hit all of those things. And everybody's got something they're responsible for. And then once we review quarter three, we're looking at, okay, what do we need to get done in quarter four to get our yearly marks? And then we set those targets. And again, how many hours are we working? All those things that, is this possible? Is it attainable? Or are we going to be within, be able to reach our goals? And then at the end of the leadership meeting, again, every employee's got a target that they're going to work towards to hitting within their area of responsibilities within the accountability chart and the responsibilities of the practice. So it's great. I love it. I love focusing on the next 90 days. Like, again, if we can have a 90-day focus, you can make so much progress towards your yearly goal. But if you just set this lofty yearly goal out there and then never review or track how you're doing along the way, your chances of hitting that goal are pretty slim. Like, you really need to break down into these waypoints along the way, like where these 90-day worlds make all the difference in actually having traction, moving forward into practice. And so super critical to do that. And again, yesterday was a great meeting with the leadership team, and it's fun to see, we've got a lot of stuff going on in the practice. We're exiting all of our insurance at this point, and so there's some big goals that we've had in there, and then setting targets and waypoints, and then measuring our success against those. Where do we need to be to really be successful at this? It's been great. So yeah.
Yeah, this is where a lot of dentists make the mistake of they get fired up at the end of the year, getting ready for the next year. Maybe January 1, they sit down they set a goal for the year. And I did this for a lot of years myself. I sit down and say, okay, last year we produced 1.1 million. So this year we're going to produce 1.2, right? That was my thought because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I didn't know better. Wasn't using any data. I just said, we're just going to work harder. That's all that it was. Ryan, how many KPIs did we review yesterday?
It's probably, I mean, yeah, there's probably a good 30 KPIs in there or more. On a weekly basis, we review 45. But I would say yesterday, as far as like goals for each employee and targets, there's probably a good 30 up there, that we go through. Yeah.
Yeah, when we say that milestone 4 is setting your waypoints, we're talking, a lot of these waypoints are KPIs, right? These key performing indicators are going to be where you're hitting your mark in order to move on to the next step. And that's why you can't just do this once. And you don't just do this once. You do this every quarter. And at the end of the quarter, we're like, how did we do? Man, we really crushed this waypoint. We underestimated what we could do. Why? What is the data telling us? Why did this happen? Let's now understand that and let's move on to the next. Let's set the next waypoint as a more realistic one, or vice versa. Man, we were way off on this one. Like we weren't even close. What is the data telling us? Why is this happening? What's going on within our practice? What kind of things we need to change? And that way, we're doing this quarterly rather than at the end of the year. We're like, oh man, we're going to be way off our goal. Why?
Well, and the other thing that goes along with that is like, once we set those quarterly goals every week, we're like, are you on track? Or are you off track? Like to hit that quarterly goal, which then really keeps us dialed in because it's not like you're waiting till the end of the quarter to be like, oh, we missed that. We're monitoring that on a week to week basis. Are you on track? Or are you off track? And it's like, if we're on track, great. If we're off track, what's the issue? And then how do we course correct before the end of the quarter so that we're where we need to be, along the way. So yeah.
I think an important point for this, important understanding for this is employees, your team members at first may balk at waypoints. Right? At first, they're like, "Oh, by setting goals,
All about the numbers.
it's all about the numbers. Can't treat patients." I'm going to tell you, setting goals and numbers and the KPIs do two things. One, it allows us to treat our patients the way that we want them to be treated. Right. So, meaning we're not setting these ridiculous goals that are unachievable. We're setting goals based upon what a patient should be receiving in order to be treated like they should be treated. We're all we're asking is that we're getting all the necessary X-rays, the fluoride when necessary, the exams when necessary, and all this does is allows the patient to get the best patient experience that they can have when coming to our practice. That's point one. Point two is now the employees know what is expected of them. So if you don't set these expectations, at the end of the year, you pull up the numbers. They've been doing this for a year, right? You pull up the numbers, say, "Oh man, you only produced $125 an hour," and then all of a sudden you're frustrated because you think you heard the KPI should be $200 an hour or 175, and you haven't been talking about this at all during the year, and your agent's like, "Whoa, where's this coming from? I do, and they become defensive, and all of a sudden the fight starts. Well, set this at the beginning. This is what the expectations are, and the reason why we set this with you is because we expect them the patient to get this experience. We want them to be treated the way that we want them to be treated. And then once that expectation hits, there's no misunderstanding, there's no miscommunication between expectations, which was such a relief for me. Setting these waypoints was such a relief for me as an owner. It actually made my life easier once I set these waypoints with my staff.
Awesome. It's fantastic. So now that we have the waypoints done, what's the next step along the journey, Jared?
You got to figure out how to get patients to fulfill these expectations or waypoints that you set, right? So you've got to be able to map out your marketing. Who are you going to who do you want to treat? Who do you want to service now? And this is I don't know if we need to go too much into this step
Yeah.
today, but a lot of dentists struggle with this because we used to a lot of times we come out of school and thinking we're just going to hang a shingle and people are going to come. And that used to be the case. And it is still in some places, right? You put up a sign, start a practice or buy practice, and people are just going to come because people need dentistry. But that's one way to practice. The better way to practice is to realize who your ideal patient is. Who do you actually want to be treating? And is that a possibility, right? Is it a possibility to say, I don't want to treat that jerk who just came through my door, right? I would rather not treat that type of person. Or do you just say, I'm a dentist. I'm a general dentist. They come in, they bring money. So I'm just going to continue to treat them. There's got to be a better way to practice, right?
Right. And I think having these clear goals in mind first kind of help you establish like who is my ideal patient? Where do I want to be spending my time? What procedures do I enjoy? What patients do I like working with? Are they insurance patients? Are they cash patients? You know, like otherwise, like you're saying, you just kind of put up your shingle and the door's open for anybody. And again, I think taking some time to be like, what kind of dentistry do we want to do? Who is that ideal patient? And then spend some time marketing or trying to bring in that ideal patient into your practice so that you're spending time doing stuff you enjoy. Yeah, if you don't like, dealing with the insurance headaches, that you're avoiding those patients as well, or Medicaid or whatever it is that you've mapped out, who is my ideal patient? What do they look like? And where do we find them, and then how do we bring them into the practice? So again, so that you're working on things that you love to do, you're working with people you love to work on, doing the dentistry that you like to do, and you're spending your time and effort where it's going to make the most impact for your practice and get you to your goals in the end, right? But if you don't take time to do that, you know your experience can be a little frustrating because you're dealing with patients that aren't your ideal patient for your practice, right?
Yeah, this is a lot more fun than what I thought it was going to be because you actually sit down and this isn't just simply hiring a marketing team. You actually have to be involved and you have to be prepared to give input on what you want to do and the people that you want to attract. So you actually sit down and you create this avatar. This is a fun process that that you can go through. Is at the end of the day, you're like, okay, my ideal avatar is his name is Roger. He's 50 to 70 years old. He's working on retiring. He's transitioning out of insurance and wants to go to our patient benefit plan. He is, needing a lot of old dentistry replaced by, crowns. Is interested in the technology. You can get very deep into creating this ideal avatar, and that way, when you go out and market, you're not just blowing stuff into the wind, hoping that reaches a random person, right?
Right.
You go get Roger. You go get those guys, and that's the fun part about marketing. And anyway, we could talk more about this, but we should probably move on to milestone 6. Let's go on to 6.
Okay, so milestone 6, roles and responsibilities. So now that you've got like a team, right? Because every dental practice has a team. You've got your team that's climbing with you towards the peak. It's super important to kind of like establish roles and responsibilities within that team. And so milestone 6 is really uh, trying to organize your team and using like an accountability chart to structure, who reports to who's responsible for what, and then how do we work together to accomplish the different goals within the practice. So, um, what were some of the hardest things for you to let go as a doc, as far as like delegation and stuff within your team, or for what did you find as you started to like create accountability charts, and then as we went through the process, what were some of your biggest takeaways, Jared, I guess?
One of my biggest frustrations that I had as a private practice owner was I was constantly fielding complaints from team members that so and so wasn't doing this, so and so wasn't doing that. Because when we talk about roles and responsibilities and accountability charts, an assistant isn't just an assistant. Right? That's not just his or her role, right? An office manager or a treatment coordinator, you need to sit down and define what that means. Is if not, if you don't sit down and define that, they have their own definition, and their definition doesn't always jive with what you're thinking they should or shouldn't be doing. For example, if you have somebody come from another office who was an office manager or was trained under a certain office manager, they have an expectation what they think the office manager should do. And if you don't want that office manager to do that, then you need to sit down and define what you want them to do. So I think this was a big deal. And then not only that, but you have this chain of command. So okay, so the assistants report to this person then can report to the leadership team. if you don't do this, if you don't sit down and create an accountability chart and roles and responsibilities, then you end up running a dictatorship. A dictatorship is going to suck the life out of you and burn you out faster than any sort of dentistry will. Like, this is what allows you to then embolden or empower your employees to make decisions within the realm or the confines of their role or their responsibility. And not only that, but they can say, "I've done this," and you can celebrate that. Man, you've done everything that I've asked. Like, this is within your role or responsibility. And then that way, also when issues come up, and we're going to talk about that in the next one. But when issues come up, you can say, well, where who in the accountability chart, who does this fall under? And if you don't know, then you figure it out together as a team, and you then decide this is probably the best person to solve this or fix this problem is probably this person, right? And you work it out together. That way, it's not like, oh, so and so didn't do sterilization. Like, he's like, well, no one ever, that's not her job. But because you haven't, as an owner, you haven't set that or defined that, then other people are going to put those expectations on other employees. And it's going to cause resentment. It's going to cause frustration. And that's when things blow up. And I dealt with that for too long. And that was too much for me. And then I ran this dictatorship, and I was so burned out after a while that I needed to sit down and say, this is now the roles, responsibilities. I need to let go of this and focus on what I need to focus on. And but you've got to do it in the right way. You can't just say, you take care of it, right? It's got to be set out the right way. Ryan, have you had any success or challenges in setting these up for other offices?
It's interesting just because, it's a fun process for us to go through and do this. There's so many responsibilities within a dental practice. And even if you're a smaller practice, one of the challenges is like you still have the same amount of responsibilities as a large practice. They just have to be delegated to fewer people, but you still need to go through those same things, right? There's still these 100 responsibilities within a dental practice that you've got to get assigned out, and who's in charge of those. But it's just a fun process to go through with the docs, because again, the offices are so different. But then when they sit down and be like, oh, um, we need to do these. And it can also help, one thing we found is it also helps them clarify, like, I maybe need a new role within my practice
Uh-huh.
that need to create a new seat and get somebody in there. Or maybe this person's in the wrong seat. Maybe this person and these responsibilities don't go well together. And so I need to make some changes in my team and the structure. And so really evaluating like how well your team's performing, who's responsible for what, having a good accountability chart, evaluating again, employees based on their responsibilities. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do these responsibilities? And then making sure you've got the right people in the right spot, the right structure. So everyone's rowing in the right direction, right? Everyone's moving towards the same summit at the end of the day. So I think it's been fun. We use some pretty dynamic software that helps put these accountability charts together, and it's fun to have that. And again, we occasionally have to pull out the accountability chart and say, where does this fall within that? Who's responsible for this? And then make sure there's some follow up done with those. So it's just super important. And again, like as a practice owner, as an entrepreneur, all of you guys have teams, it's just important to like really help your team understand their role within the practice and what they're responsible for. And then we've seen like, once people know the expectations, they tend to rise to and do a better job. But if the expectations are vague or not explained well, then people don't know what it means to do a good job or what they're responsible for. So I think just taking some time again to organize, get some structure in place, and then help everybody, row in the right direction is awesome.
Yeah, if you have the employee that's always saying, I do everything around this office. I'm always picking up the pieces. That's a poorly put together role or roles and
Right.
responsibilities or accountability chart. That means you haven't defined who should be doing what,
Yeah.
and that allows them to be a bit of a martyr of sorts, right? And then they're gonna, then they think they deserve a raise or more money, and all it does is cause resentment between that person and other people. So this is a way to solve so many problems and interpersonal problems within your office and employees, and it gives everyone, a sense of understanding of what they're responsible for.
Right. I think this ties well into milestone 7. Now that you have the roles and responsibilities outlined, how do you keep your team fired up and working together, Jared?
Yeah.
What's
So after you have everything set, you've got your BHAG, you've got your core values, you've got your waypoints, your markets. Yeah, you got everything all lined up, and you're rolling and you're running. Guess what? You're still going to run into issues, right? You're not going to set it up perfectly the first time, so you're still going to have some issues. You're still going to say, "Man, oh, why did we not get this case back from this lab?" And so you can put that as an issue. You're going to say, you're gonna have a weekly meeting. That's what this, keep your team fired up is. You're gonna have a weekly meeting. You're gonna set aside not 10 minutes, set aside some time, set aside an hour, hour and a half, whatever time you need to really address the issues that come up on a weekly basis. Don't let them fester for a month. Don't let them fester for a quarter. Address issues as they come up on a weekly basis. That way, oh, we didn't get this case back from the lab. That goes on the issue list. It's entered by the person who notices the issue. Maybe it's your assistant. Hey, we didn't get this lab back. It's not placing blame on somebody. It's not saying so and so didn't get this order, right? It's like we didn't get this back in time. What happened? What's our process? And then you can go back to your processes or your roles and your responsibilities, and you can say, oh, we didn't get this done because of this. It was an oversight. Nobody actually had that responsibility. And so now it's assigned to somebody. We move on, and boom, you've solved an issue. This roles and responsibilities is a living document that's constantly upgraded as the issues and it's adjusted. Maybe you set this roles and responsibilities accountability chart up, and you run for a week or 2 week or a month, and you realize so and so is doing way too much. Let's take some of those responsibilities and adjust them and bring it back over here, and let this person take some of that on. They're not even busy enough. They're not being challenged enough. So keeping this allows your team to stay fired up, right? On a weekly basis, this allows you to celebrate the previous week's wins, right? Hey, we crushed it, right? We hit our production goal, our collections goal, whatever it is. This is our core value. We saw so and so, exemplify the laser vision core value. We just wanted to recognize her and say, "You're awesome. Thank you for doing this." Right? This is getting your team fired up. This is your way to celebrate on a weekly basis. Holy cow! Our hygiene team did what? We had like 67% fluoride last week. Amazing. Good job, hygienists, or whatever it is. This allows you to stay fired up on a weekly basis and then work through some of the issues. And that is just so important. And this isn't, like I said, this is not a 10-minute, let's fly in, let's review the schedule stuff. That's not a meeting.
Yeah.
That's a daily huddle. You go through that daily huddle, fine. That's important. And we should be doing that. But on a weekly basis, take an hour, hour and a half, whatever. We take hours to do ours because we do our team one, we do our leadership meeting. Monday morning, 8 to 10 is our meeting time. And that's a non-negotiable. You are not late for that. You miss that only if you are dead or on vacation, right? That's it. So that's important that those expectations are set.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where I think, docs sometimes struggle to be like, oh, I can't give up that hour of production. But, taking that 1 hour every week makes the other 39 hours in the week so much more profitable, so much more productive. Like it's it can seem like, oh, we just don't have time for that. But man, I don't know what we would do without that every week to celebrate the victories, work on our issues. Like we've been at this for 5 years here. I don't know how many issues we've worked on, but it's every week there's more issues in the issue list, right? Like, and it's just we're improving, improving, improving. Things are getting better, and just gives us that weekly, hey, we're all on the same team. We're all moving in the same direction. How do we improve? How do we get better? What do we need to change? and it's been fantastic, right? Just keeping people fired up and moving forward. It's just part of the process, and it's a necessary step to reach your summit, I think, for sure. Well, those are the first seven. The last milestone, number eight, is support and collaboration. So I think a lot of this is why Elevation Association exists. Kind of your part of your dream and vision for EA. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the importance of like support, collaboration, uh, for you as a dentist, how important that's been, and kind of the role that's played in your life over the last few years.
Yeah, as you go on a trek or as you climb a mountain, you're not gonna do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone. There's no reason to do it alone, and it's not nearly as enjoyable, and you're gonna make mistakes, you're not gonna know why, and it's potentially incredibly hazardous to do it on your own. And so for me, I really struggled to make some decisions knowing whether they were right or wrong, right? I didn't know what my options were, what my possibilities were, and I wanted really unbiased opinions. I wanted to hear stories. I wanted to hear why they made the decisions they made in their practice. I want to know why Steve Call left private practice after 10 years and went into the university level and started to teach. I wanted to know why people were using KPIs. I wanted to know how they were using them. I wanted to sit down and have these frank discussions with people without them feeling like they had to put on um, a persona, right? I didn't want them to feel like they had to be bravado about how amazing they were. I wanted to create an atmosphere where dentists could come, take off the mask, and just say, "Look, these are the things that I don't know. I'm struggling with. What do you guys think? What's worked for you?" And not and in a very non-judgmental environment, right? Not feeling like they have to say, "This is the way to do it," right? So we created an elevation association. We created a tribe, right? Um, and what we've done is what we found is we have these CE events. We have these continuing education events where we talk about life. We talk about leadership in your practice. We talk about leaving a legacy. We talk about the things that matter beyond the handpiece. There's lots of great CE courses out there to teach you how to place an implant or do a sinus lift. Go do those, and those are incredibly important for your skill set. There's also another incredibly important part of your life, and that is to take time to discuss your life, your harmony in your life. How is your practice serving you and your spouse, your family? What is what is the legacy that you're going to leave when you're finished with this life? So we talk about all of these things in an environment where you can step away from the practice and you can work with other dentists on a one-to-one basis. You can have these conversations. And that's what the Elevation Association is all about is having these conversations and then also having the resources that will allow you to create some of these plans to help you define your life, define your legacy, what you want to do. We have an online community on school where you can get on a daily basis and just see what people are talking about. We've recently added Kat and Jeremiah from Elite Health and Wellness to talk about your health, talk about your fitness, talk about peptides, talk about hormones, talk about nutrition, talk about lifting. We talk about all that sort of lifestyle that's outside of the practice because essentially that's why we do this. So we've created Elevation Association for this support and collaboration, right? For this tribe outside of the office that will help you both within your office and outside of your office in your life.
Now it's been fantastic, to have docs get together, and there's so much magic that happens when docs can be vulnerable. Again, share ideas, thoughts, best practices, things that have worked for them, inspiration. That's part of how the Dental Legacy Foundation came about, and all the good that that's doing. And it's just been super cool to be a part of those things and see that come together. The school communities, fantastic area again. to not just work on your practice, but work on your life and how you show up in the world. And Elevation Association's been like such a good um, collaborative group, and it's been so much fun. And again, like, it's fun to see these docs sometimes that we work with that are all alone and isolated, um, not just physically because they live in some remote area of the world, but a lot of these docs just don't have a tribe, they don't have a community, a sounding board, and Elevation Association provides that, I think, and really can provide um, some friendship, some camaraderie, some collaboration, a good sounding board of like-minded dentists who are trying to show up and be their best version of themselves. And it's a great tribe to be associated with. Again, you shouldn't be out climbing by yourself. You need a rope team. You need people to help you along the way. Those that have been ahead of you and those that are, it gives you a chance to mentor those who are coming behind you. It's a fantastic opportunity to get in and rub shoulders with some amazing human beings and be a part of something big. So I love that aspect of like, don't climb alone, get in with a rope team and get some support, and get some friends and have some fun, which is great. So
Yeah, this climb is not a straight line, right? It's got switchbacks, it's got storms, it's got breakthroughs. These moments where you have these moments of clarity, and then you have these moments of where you can't see a thing, and that's what you need to try to be prepared for and get ready for. And that's what we do at Elevation Association. Today we just gave basically an overview or a glimpse of the roadmap, right? Of these milestones. Ryan, is there a way that people can dive into a deeper dive into these milestones?
so yeah, the best way is to come to one of our outfitters leadership master class. It's what we call them, where we take 2 days up here in Sun Valley. We try to do these quarterly. I think the next one coming up, because of Africa coming up, the next one's in January, end of January this year. Where you come out here, we work on all of these 8 milestones together with your practice. We go through defining your vision, setting your baseline. We work through your core values, your marketing strategy, your ideal patient. We work through all of these steps, roles, responsibilities, accountability charts, all of these things together, and actually customize them for your practice. We've got some systems set up. So you come the first day, we work through a lot of the information. And then the second day, we're customizing all of these things for you so that when you leave with a guide to help you reach your summit, which is fantastic. We also work with docs on a week to week, month to month basis with these same principles within the EA. So you can kind of go at a slower pace if you want, week by week, month by month. But again, the best way is just to come to an outfitter's masterclass. Let's get the vision in place. Let's get these things put into to practice, customizable for you, your practice, your dreams, your office, and then really provide you with some structure for your business moving forward on how you want to do that. So you can find out more information on our website, elevationassociation.com, on the Outfitters Masterclass, and really kind of getting a jump start to these things, and getting your leadership plan mapped out, which is fantastic. So
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, you come to Sun Valley, beautiful Sun Valley, for that master class. And if it's in the winter, we'll do a fun outdoor winter activity. If it's in the summertime, we'll maybe go float the Silver Creek or paddleboard or something that's fun. Whatever it is, it's a beautiful time of the year to get out and come visit us, see what we're about. Go to our website, check us out at school. We'd love to have you be a part of us. If this interests you, contact us, let us know, and we can move forward. If not, we will you'll hear from us again next week. Thanks, Ryan.
thanks, guys.
See ya.